lucky to have Tory here to give us her expertise as a lobbyist. You can read her bio on the back of all the amazing things she does. And she is going to help us learn how to use the personal story of self into your pitches and into your persuasive arguments. And we are going to try to get her PowerPoint up as she's talking, but she is going to go with it. Sorry about that.
Okay,
so welcome.
Thank you so much.
When this comes on, all you do is click that button, and we'll tell you when it's ready. Oh, it's on. So you have a microphone, Elise.
Hi.
She's got the magic touch.
Hi. How are all of you doing? How's your day going?
And we're sorry about the temperature in the room. We can't change it.
Yeah, we've heard it's very cold in here. Apologies. I don't know how to fix it either, so that's that. So I am Tory. How many of you have heard me speak before about telling the story of self? Just one, two, three? Oh, good. 4. I was a little worried. I was like, I wonder if everyone has heard this before. So a little bit about me is I'm a lobbyist, but I'm also a grassroots organizer. I'm union trained, and I spent 10 years working for the Alliance for Retired Americans, which is the union retiree club, pretty much, and learned a lot of good stuff working for them. Translated that into other work that I do for other clients. Oh, look, here we go. So basically, what I do as a lobbyist is a little different. Thank you. It is a little different than from what you may think of a lobbyist, right? So what I do is more like grassroots organizing and advocacy, because I am used to being the underdog at the Capitol. I do not have access to the Speaker's office. I don't have access to the 8th or 9th floors of the Executive Tower. Those are not places where I am invited. But I can be very effective by pushing grassroots swell up around issues. And so that's what I do. And I thank you, Diane, for inviting me to come speak today. The reason why she invited me is because the only way that we can be successful at pushing issues through a legislature that doesn't like us is by telling our stories, is by showing up. We don't have the luxury of throwing tens of thousands of dollars on junkets, right? Trips to wherever, Israel, Puerto Rico, Miami. I can't even tell you, I hang out with lobbyists, I know where they go. I never get to go to these places. And it's mostly because I don't have the money to throw at those things. I work for nonprofits, I work for issues. So any issue I work for is one that I personally care a lot about. So this issue is important to me. Very important. I wore white for you today. In solidarity. I've seen your sentinels at the Capitol when I've been down there, and every time I don't know if I saw some of you, but I try to go up and tell you thank you for being there. That's the kind of stuff that's really, really important. So what we're going to talk about today is, I'm going to just give you a little overview of the committee process. I'd like for you to think about using the skills you're going to learn today in committee testimony, of which you'll only get maybe 2 minutes to speak. You can use this skill when you are sitting in a lawmaker's office with them. You can use this when you, like I many times do, run into the elevator to catch someone that you want to talk to, and you have maybe 15 seconds to get your point across. What we're going to do today is just talk about how to translate your personal story into a 2-minute elevator pitch, even though at the Capitol we have 3 floors, so you get 15 seconds.
Am I on the right slide?
I'm not sure.
This is the next one.
Yeah, go back, let's see.
This is the first one.
Okay, so we're going to talk first about best practices for testifying. How many of you have a request to speak account? Okay, those of you that don't, let's get you signed up. Number 2, those of you who have a request to speak account, how many of you have ever used it to make a comment about legislation? Okay, all right. And now, how many of you have shown up to committee and testified? Okay, wow, give them a hand. Seriously, it can be really nerve-wracking, especially when you know you're walking into a committee that's stacked against you.
I'm a ringer. I'm a affairs officer for the State Nurses Association when I do that.
Thank you. Okay, so oftentimes when we get to, I'm going to talk about the committee process. Go ahead and move a slide. Okay. So what is a committee? A committee is a part of the This is probably the only spot in the entire process when a bill starts from an idea to becoming law where the people actually have the opportunity to speak publicly about that bill. So committees are small groups of assigned legislators who get together to talk about, the bills that come to their committee. How are those bills assigned? Does anybody know? Besides, yes.
The Speaker of the House, I believe, on the one side, but
Yes.
the other
President.
You are correct. So the Senate President and the Speaker of the House, they assign the bills. So every year we have about 1,500 bills which are introduced. And the lingo you'll hear for that is dropped. So we have 1,500 bills that are dropped every year. Of those bills, they do not all get a committee hearing, okay? Only the bills that get assigned to a committee and then get assigned to an agenda get a hearing. So we're talking maybe 400 bills in an entire legislative session, maybe 500, that actually get to the point of public comment. So oftentimes you'll say, oh, I've heard of this really great bill, it ratifies the ERA, and we all want to go down and talk about it, right? Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to, and why is that?
Because it wasn't given a hearing.
It was never given a hearing. Oftentimes, these bills aren't even assigned, and that's frustrating, right? So how do you change that? Well, you have to change the leadership. You have to change the Senate President, and you have to change the Speaker of the House, and we do that through elections. I know all of you know that, so I won't go any farther than that. Once we get our bills heard, we'll be able to move them. There are other ways, though, that you can get your bills heard, and that's through, striker amendments and all these, lobbyist maneuverings towards the end of session. And that would be awesome if we could do that. I know that we've done it a few times on the floor where they brought it up as an amendment, even knowing it wouldn't pass, but just to have the conversation open. Okay, but committee. Why do we care about committee? Well, right now we're in defense mode on a lot of issues, a lot of women's reproductive rights issues, just school issues. There's so many things that we're on the defense for. And I don't know about you, but I've been to some of these meetings before where they have public comment, and I've been surrounded by people who disagree with me. I mean, hundreds even. This happened at the State Board of Education last summer over changing sex education to be medically and scientifically accurate. That's all they were doing. Let's just make it medically and scientifically accurate. And so things like it's not going to be a big deal, but they pull in. There were probably 300 people. I'm really not exaggerating. I waited 3 hours to testify. 300 people calling those of us who want scientifically and medically accurate sex education, calling us perverts. It's pretty disgusting. Anyway, the point is, we can't let that happen. You have to be armed and prepared with the knowledge of how to tell your story and how to get the message across at these meetings, because if you don't, then the other side will swallow it up, okay? And that's all the media will report about. In fact, that is all the media reported about the next day on that meeting. And it's unfortunate because it sets us back, because we're trying to help kids to have information that they need to make good, positive choices for their bodies, and we're not even able to get that into schools. So when you go to a committee meeting, this is at the Capitol, so let's say a bill is dropped, and I'm trying to think of a good example of one for you. Anyway, let's say a bill is dropped about, all right, let's talk about sex education. I was just on that, all right? So we have a bill on sex education. Let's say it's the one that we think is coming that's going to prohibit any school from talking about sex education from K through 4th grade, okay? So we know that bill's coming, so we'll hypothetically say this, and I'm hoping I'll see all of you there when we come to testify, because that bill is being introduced by Sylvia Allen. Sylvia Allen is a state senator from Snowflake. She's the chair of an education committee. She gets her bills heard, or she does. Yeah, she's going to have her bills heard, so we need to be prepared. So let's talk about this. So what do we want to see? So we'll know a week prior to the meeting that bill is going to be on the agenda. You're going to get 1 week's notice. When you get your 1 week's notice, then you can sign into the request to speak system, and you can log in your concerns or your support for the bill through that system. Have you had a training on request to speak?
Yeah, she did it.
Okay, good. The training's been done. All right, so you've done that. And she probably told you can click yes or no about speaking, okay? Come on down and click yes. I'd love to see all of you there. Okay, so then when we get to the actual committee hearing, the committee chairman will announce the agenda and the order in which the bills will be heard. Generally, they stick to those. Then staff will present the bill information, and staff, the committee staff are nonpartisan, and they do a pretty good job, I think, of explaining the bill. They don't take sides necessarily, but we do have majority and minority staff in the room, but then there's a committee staff member who's kind of like the majority staff. So they may have a bias, just remember that. But for the most part, I think the staff do a good job. They'll present information about the bill, and then they'll take testimony from lobbyists like me who are speaking on behalf of an entire group, from concerned parents like you who might be speaking for yourself or for another group, from other lawmakers, pretty much from anybody. And what we'll find is if we have a room that's full of people, maybe 300 people or less, even 20 people, sometimes the committee chair will say, okay, each side needs to pick 2 people to speak. And I hate when they do that. As if we all have to say the same thing, right? Sometimes they do that. Sometimes you'll get a committee chair who will say, all right, everybody's gonna get a chance to speak, but I'm gonna limit you to 1 or 2 minutes. That's pretty common. And you could say, well, how do we know how it's gonna be? Well, it really just depends. It's up to that committee chairperson. That's it. Whoever chairs the committee gets to decide the agenda for the committee and how the committee will proceed. So, I'm going to go to the next slide.
Oh, this is what happened last time. It's the secondary.
Oh, there it goes. During committee, they might amend the bill. When they do an amendment in committee, they do it on a voice vote. So you won't necessarily know how lawmakers are voting on the amendment. And sometimes the amendment is the very worst thing that you're there to be against. So it's important to note who votes and how they vote, but it won't be, you have to kind of be there to see that on a voice vote because it's not recorded in any place. They can procedurally call for a roll call vote, but that's rarely done in committee. I don't know, Diane, if you've seen that happen a lot. It happens on the floor whenever the minority party really wants to stick it to the majority about their vote and have it on record. So they do that on the floor, but in committee, it's all in voice. So it's hard to keep track of how the lawmakers are voting. If a motion is made to pass a bill, then they take a roll call vote, okay? So as amended or whatnot. And alternatively, a chairman may hold a bill to keep it from moving. So what are the opportunities in committee are great, actually. Committee is like my favorite way to engage people in the process. Because number one, we just talked about amendments. If you have a friendly lawmaker on that panel, which you probably do, and if you don't know who that is, ask someone else, ask me, I'll help you decide who's gonna be friendly to you. You can actually go to that lawmaker, once that the bill's been posted even, you can go and ask them for an amendment. Say, this is what we think should happen. We think it should be like this. And then they have to have a whole discussion on that amendment. And even if the amendment doesn't pass, you now have that recorded discussion and you have lawmakers saying things about it, which can only help you as you move forward in your messaging. Okay. So if they pass the bill through, then it goes through the process. It has to go through rules. Historically, the Rules Committee, have you guys heard of Rules Committee before? Okay. Historically, Rules Committee has been pretty much no big deal, right? I would tell people don't waste your time going to Rules Committee because any changes that are going to happen in rules, they're going to happen behind the scenes with lobbyists. They never change things in the committee. If you all show up, that's fine. There might be a news story about it, but as far as affecting the committee itself, it's not.
You can't speak either.
You can't speak during it. So I always said, like, just don't bother with the Rules Committee. Save your energy, use your energy to start working your floor votes. And that's where these meetings with lawmakers come into play. And this is why telling your story is so important. You have to be prepared to tell your story in the elevator if you can catch them, right, like we talked about. In committee, if you get your 2 minutes to speak. And also when you're meeting with them in their offices. Okay, we'll move forward. Here's some, I just put together like committee hearing do's and don'ts. And these aren't my rules or anything. If you don't like them, then that's fine. I'm not telling you what to do. These are just the guidelines that I follow and that I tell all my clients to follow as well. And the reason why is because I like to be invited back to the legislature. One of the things I've always joked about doing on my very last day of lobbying is just to show up in a banana suit and just be like, "This is bananas," and run away. Because it really is bananas. But as somebody who kind of wants to be invited back, I do hold my composure, and if I think something's bananas, I keep it to myself generally. But that doesn't mean all of you. I mean, if you don't work there for a living like I do, you can do whatever you want.
I'll be there in my bananas.
I worked for unions for so long, I know like not to tell people to not do something because they'll just get mad at you for telling them what to do. So do what you want, but just know they have rules at the Capitol and you will get kicked out and possibly not allowed back in. Y'all hear about those Patriot Movement people that followed into Kelly Butler's office? That's crazy. And don't do that. Make an appointment. Okay. So when you're in committee, you're polite, you tell your story, use emotion, absolutely. This is your story, and we're gonna hone your story together. Use your emotion, feel free to express yourself, but make sure you don't lie, you don't exaggerate, and also don't be afraid, right? Don't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid that lawmakers are gonna ask them questions that they're not gonna be able to answer, and the truth is that barely ever happens. It barely ever happens that the lawmakers sitting on the committee are going to attack somebody who's standing there who came from the public to speak. They're looking at attacking people like me, who they see all the time, okay? But they hardly ever go after citizens or anything like that. So don't be afraid to come and share your story. You cannot bring signs to the committee, you probably know this, but you can wear things like a sash. Do they let them wear the sashes? That's great. I want one.
And the stickers.
And the stickers.
Buttons.
Stickers, buttons, etc. Just you can't bring a sign in. You can't bring a sign. You should always respect the chair's rules. And if at all possible, maybe you have talked to the chair ahead of time. I always encourage people to make appointments with lawmakers, even if they don't agree with you. It's good to put a face. It's good to get personal connection with the lawmakers, even if they're the chairman of the committee that makes you want to hit your head against the wall. Okay, go ahead, go next. See? Because so often we find ourselves at the Capitol hitting our heads against the wall because it's so frustrating, all of these policies that just get moved forward and moved forward and moved forward, and they're not good for women, they're terrible for kids, and we're out there like, hey, listen to us, and sometimes we feel like they're not listening to us. But I've been doing this work now, I'm going to say it's been like 7 years that I've been focusing at the legislature and less on the federal union issues. And I have seen a lot of changes come about because of the organization of people and people telling their stories. And so this is a training that I have given pretty consistently over the last 4 years. So I am hopeful that people actually get something out of it and you can use it moving forward. So now we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. Does everybody have a pen?
Speak through the chair.
Okay, the question is, what do I mean by do speak through the chair? So that is just a decorum. If you are presenting to a committee and there's 7 people on the committee, and a representative over here from District 28 asks you a question, when you answer the question, you don't answer to the District 28 representative, you answer to the chairperson. It's very interesting. And you'll also notice that when they asked you that question, they didn't ask you, they asked the chair. But it's a minute detail. You won't get kicked out for not doing it. The chair, depends on how picky they are, they'll usually just correct you.
But
shut
super
yourself up.
sensitive.
I
Very
push up.
sen-
Yeah, some chair people are very, very into that, and they will just stop you up through the chair, please,
And so
through the chair.
you actually say chairperson Ugenti Rita and legislator so-and-so.
Yes,
And then what are you gonna say? But you address it to the chairperson
yes. you
and say
address-
the name.
Mhm. It's kind of a quirky thing. But the reason why I like to tell people about that, and like I said, you won't get kicked out for it, but they use it as kind of a way to mess you up. Like, speak through the chair, you know, and the reason why I know this is because other chair people are very gentle about it, and they'll be like, oh, you know, through the chair, please, and things like that. So it's just, if you already know, hey, I'm gonna speak through the chair, then you'll have no problems. So be like, thank you, Chairwoman, so-and-so, Representative Diane, here's the answer to your question. So really, we're having the conversation, but it's all going through the chair. It's just a decorum.
And you're looking at the chair, you're not looking
Yes.
at
You-
L 28?
Yeah, I actually do. I go back and forth, so. But you have to make sure that it goes through the chair. And the reason why is because the chair is actually in control of this meeting and can kick you out at any time or decide if they want you to stop talking. I mean, I have been cut off by chair people before, even though I'm supposed to have 2 minutes, and they've just cut me off, and then I've gone back and looked at the video to see how long did I actually speak, and it was like 45 seconds. But they didn't like what I had to say, so they cut me off. It happens. That was Eddie Farnsworth. Y'all hate him, right?
You say thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Goodness. I did say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time, because that's what you do when you want to come back to committee and speak again. It's
Like an ass.
He does that by
It
himself.
was really sad actually. I had some women that I had found who had we were working on this nasty abortion bill, and it was about third trimester abortions. And I found some women who had gone through having a third trimester abortion, and after hearing their stories, I said to them, everyone else needs to hear this, because a lot of people just think that this is the most horrible thing, and we buy into the narrative that we've heard. And I'm like, you need to come and tell your story. One of the women, I had 2 women come to committee that day, and we had worked on getting their story together. And Chairman Farnsworth actually cut one of them off while she was in the middle of like crying and telling her story, and it was really bad. It was, but we actually got front page of the Arizona Republic for one of those ladies and her testimony, because it was so powerful. It was so powerful, because she said basically, if he had been born alive, this was like a born alive bill, if he had been born alive, I would have wanted him on my chest, because she loved her baby, right? She loved her baby. And I think that was one of the things that they were trying to paint about women who were doing who have a third trimester abortion, that they're somehow using this as a way to not be a mother or this or that. They don't realize that these third trimester abortions are generally because there's something really, really wrong. Really, really wrong. And so they were really just hurting families and hurting mothers and taking the decision about their child away from them and putting it in the hands of the government. And that was what we were able to get across. That bill was made better because of the testimony. We did have an amendment on the floor that passed because we were able to show that the narrative was wrong, that they were pushing, that we were able to show this, and we did it through the stories. And that's what I'm trying to explain to you. There was a neonatologist there that day who ended up speaking for 45 minutes. And how does that happen? It's because they asked questions, and it just went on and on. A neonatologist who works with these teeny tiny, tiny, tiny babies, basically standing up and saying, this isn't the government's place to decide. Like, you need to let families decide what to do, because every case is different. And he works with these babies every single week. I think he said like 3 to 5 every single week are born, so teeny tiny. But they just called him an activist. They said, oh, he's a doctor activist. But the mother who came her story was what resonated. Does that make sense? So we all have a story to share. We all have stories to share. And the beauty of telling your story is that nobody can argue with you about your story, because it belongs to you. So what we're going to work on today, and I have about 40 minutes to get this done, so we'll do this as best we can. I did it again.
It's very sensitive.
Super sensitive. We're going to go through the worksheet I gave you, and this is interactive, so we're going to be pairing up, and we're going to be learning how to tell our stories. So the first thing I want you to think of are up to five really, policy issues that are important to you right now. What's important to you? I want you to write down up to 5 on the sheet. So we have our issues that you care about, which is good. Next, I want you to think about Think about some of your life experiences. What have you gone through? Why do you care about these issues so much? Is there, what's happened in your life that has brought you to this room on this day? What has brought you here? Why do you care so much to give up your Saturday to be at the UFCW talking about politics? What's happened in your life? What are your experiences? Why does it matter? Has something affected you personally? Has something affected one of your family members or close friends? Think about your personal life experiences, and we're gonna spend about 4 minutes right now just brainstorming out. Just write whatever comes to your mind. It's step 2, we're brainstorming. Think about the things that have happened in your life.
Issue that you care about?
Whatever you want, we're gonna tie it in, yeah, we're gonna tie it in. If you wanna think about it on the issues and go backward and go that way, that's fine too. We're gonna tie it in because basically the next step is we're gonna pick an issue that you listed and what you've brainstormed and find out how it's connected. How many of you have ever protested outside of an abortion clinic? Yeah. So I have too.
Protested for or against?
When I was in high school, I used to pray the rosary outside of abortion clinics.
Oh. Oh, no, I never did that.
Did you know that about me? So interestingly enough, I was raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic with a big family. My mom brought me to all of these events as I was growing up. I was always there. I lived at 7th Street in Bethany Home. There was a Planned Parenthood right next to my house. I used to pray the rosary, right? Went to college, got myself some education, okay? Turning point for me was a women's studies class where I learned and I was basically, my horizons were broadened. And I learned the truth about what I had been doing and also the damage that was being done by people just like me. So when I went to college, I got myself educated and I decided that upon this change of mind for myself, that I was going to make it a point to change other people's minds as well. And that is part of my advocacy work, is because all it took for me was some education. I didn't know any better. By the way, I never harassed women. But I didn't know any better. I was raised that way. And it was education. It was talking to other women. It was learning about the struggles of women throughout history that made me say, I need to be an advocate for women to have the choice and control over their bodies. This is not for me. This is not for me. And I have made it my goal, and here I am, 20 years later. 20 years later, and I have made it my life's goal to continue educating about the importance of letting women make decisions about their own bodies. And you will only see me outside of the clinics now, hanging out with the escorts and helping women. And this is what I'm trying to tell you, is that just because you think someone is not going to agree with you, doesn't mean you still shouldn't try to talk to them and share your story, because everybody can click. We can all change. We can all change. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of education. You just don't know where people have come from. You don't know what they've been taught. Sometimes it's just one story can change and impact another human.
Can we go to step 3?
Yeah. Step 3. All right, so I've just shared with you one of my life experiences. And it probably shocked some of you. You're like, Tory, really? But it was impactful. You're going to remember that story about me. You're going to remember that that is part of what drives me to do what I do. Because it's mine. It's my story. I was raised Catholic. I was raised to go do that. I went to college and got educated, and now I'm doing something else, the complete opposite, to help other women. That was my 15-second pitch. Maybe that was 8 seconds, right? But you've learned a lot about me, and you kind of understand where I'm coming from on the issue, too. That's the point of learning to tell your story very quickly. You don't want to go on and on and on. You just need to get right to the point and share your personal, relevant experience. So now we talked about our life experiences. You've brainstorm some out. Say, what happened? Why was it so meaningful? We have to connect it to one of your issues. So I want you to pick one issue from your first list that connects well with some of your life experience. Okay? And now we're going to focus on that experience. We're going to go a little deeper into it. Why was it so impactful to you? What were the challenges you faced?
About your experience, like the fact that I'm lucky enough as a Latina to live in a particular zip code, so my life expectancy is higher than other Latinos.
Yes, yes. I don't know if y'all heard her question, okay? She basically asked, she's not a statistic, she's, can it still be relevant? The answer is yes. Yes, it absolutely can. And you can use that in the opposite way, that even if it hasn't directly impacted you, but you see the impact on others, and it could have happened to you.
Yeah, I use that in my story about, I'm a mother who, if I didn't have good medical care, I would have died in some of my deliveries, and pregnancy should never be a death sentence, so I want other mothers to have the benefits of what I have. So support X thing.
That was
my
great.
quick pitch.
That was a 6-second pitch, it was good. It was about maternal health care, it was very good. How did you practice that? That's good.
But yeah, so that, I wasn't the statistic, but it's out there and it's not fair.
Yeah. Let's talk about shared values. Shared values. So shared values are not political. They are not political at all. And I want you to now think about shared values, okay, that you might, I need you to probably like pick a target. Like let's pick a public policy maker who you want to meet with. If you know of one, use a real person. If you don't, just kind of think of one that you want to make up or whatever. But I want you to think about your shared values with that person. How can you connect with them on a non-political level? This is the challenge. I often encourage people, before you're going into a meeting, if you have the time, of course, and it's not something you're doing last minute, do a little Instagram search, do a Facebook search, look at what that lawmaker's been talking about and doing. Look at what's important to that lawmaker. Does the lawmaker have children? Do they like pets? Do they like dogs or cats or this or that? Do they like to hike? Some shared value that you can connect with that lawmaker or public policy maker on. And if you can connect it to your issue, even better. Hers is great because she's talking about being a mother and having a safe childbirth experience, which all women should have a right to that. Money should not decide if you're going to have a healthy birth or not. So that's a great one because she can connect with lots of people, because most people, at least at the legislature, have children. If they haven't given birth themselves, then they probably know someone who has.
And everyone has a mother.
Everyone has a mother.
Whether they know them or not. Someone got them out of that body. They came out of someone's body. And they survived.
Everybody has a mother, yeah. Whether we know them or like them or love them and all that, yeah. So think about some shared values, and this is always a hard thing to do. I want you to brainstorm some shared values that you personally have, that someone else might have too, that you can use to connect with them when you first start talking to them.
Now, you know there's a song called I Didn't Come From Your Rib, You Came From My Vagina? Bam! Look it up on the internet, it's funnier than hell.
That's a good one.
And just an example on this has to do with the judge. I could have picked one of two judges on a case I had, and they said, oh, don't get this one, he's mean. So I looked him up, and this one was the chair of his county environmental committee, and I said, I'm taking him, because it was an environmental question, and of course I won.
That's great. So a couple of years ago, I still work for this group, it's also aunts and uncles and cousins, anybody else really. The idea is to keep kids in the family, right? So a couple years ago, I was working with this group, and my job for this group was a couple things. One of the jobs I had for this group was to get them visible at the legislature, right? So I had a group of grandmas, and I took them to meet with any lawmaker I could possibly find, right? I made phone calls and got meetings, and we met with lawmaker after lawmaker after lawmaker. And most of the lawmakers said, nice to meet you, I can't do that. Because we were asking them to increase TANF. That's temporary aid for needy families, which is basically formerly known as welfare, right? So you can imagine that's a tough sell to the legislature. But anyway, I seen these grandmas, and the door closed on us, and one day we were sitting in a Republican's office, and he said, my wife she's on the board for child help. I kind of know about this issue, and what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And we said, great. And I'm telling you right now, 4 months later, we were sitting with the governor when he signed our bill into law. All of it started with us talking to lawmakers, telling the story. And that's why I always brought a grandma with me, because the grandmas tell their story better than anyone else can. I can't tell any of your stories. The grandma will tell the story. And shared value, most people love their grandma. It's really hard to say no to grandmas, right? So that was the shared value that we worked on. It really works because you go and you say it. And I think a lot of people too at the state capitol, I can't think of anybody who is a kinship care provider there, but I think when we go and we bring the grandparents to talk to them about this issue, all they can think of is how much they wouldn't want to be a kinship care provider, because it's not something that you generally plan to do. You're not, like, I'm in my 40s and I'm planning for retirement or whatever, putting money away. I'm not thinking I'm going to be taking care of my 3 grandkids in perpetuity in 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Nobody plans for that, but life happens. So, telling the stories. Okay. Step 5. This is the most important part of telling your story, okay? All these parts are important. You can't just tell your story and then leave, okay? You gotta ask them for something. And you have to know what you're asking them for. It can't be a second thought. You have to be prepared for this, okay? Especially if you walked into an elevator with somebody. You know, hey, I'm Tory. I saw you on Horizon last week. See, I did my research right. I saw you on Horizon last week. I liked what you had to say about this. Have you considered signing on to the ERA ratification? That's a quick story. That's about all you get in the elevator. And they'll be like, yeah, I know, right? You get your 2 minutes, you can ask. I'm asking you to do something. I'm asking you to put your name on this bill. I'm asking you to support this bill. I'm asking you to help me find other people to support this bill. Depending where this lawmaker is at on the continuum, it's going to be what your ask is. If you're in committee, you're going to say, I'm asking you to vote no on this legislation. You don't just tell your story and leave. You just conclude it and you say, I'm asking you to vote no. Or yes, whatever. Just depends. Most likely with this legislature, you're asking them to vote no. That's just what happens. You can use this when you are organizing. It's not just for public policy makers, okay? This is also getting more people to join your cause. Your ask, you could be having coffee with one of your best friends, and you could give them your 2-minute elevator pitch and say at the end, and I'm asking you to join the cause. Will you come with me to an event? Will you sign up, to volunteer with me for this? Would you be willing to get more information? Always have your ask, okay? So now we're gonna
money.
give money. Oh, right. Money. Thank you, Diane. All right. Now, have you all filled out your papers?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I've got another one.
Paper passer outer here.
Paper. And by the way, for anybody who is union-minded, these are not union printed because I printed them in-house. Putting that out there, it's important. Okay, so this is a 1-page. This is 1 page. I want you to take all the things that you've kind of sorted through on this 2-page document you've been working on, and we're gonna collapse it into 1 page. Okay, you're gonna collapse it down. So you're gonna take out all the stuff that doesn't matter. You're gonna pick your issue. Pick your issue, write your story, a couple words. It can't be more than 2 minutes. Not gonna be more than 2 minutes long, okay? And then we're gonna practice. So I want you to take some time and put it all together. Whatever issue you picked, whatever your experience is, okay? Why it's important to you, what challenges you faced. And at the very end, what your ask is, okay? So I'm gonna give you a few minutes to get that done, and then we're gonna start sharing. Okay, so let's find a partner. I'm just gonna count, I think we have mostly, I think we might have an odd number. It's okay if there's 3 people who work together. It'll make it a little harder, but it's, I want you to practice telling your story. You've just written it down. You've just written it down. You don't have to read from it, but it's in your mind. This is the whole point of writing it out, narrowing it down. Now we're just gonna practice. We're gonna practice telling each other our stories. So I'm gonna set a timer for 2 minutes, and when the 2 minutes are up, I will let you know, and that's when it's time to switch. Okay? So you're gonna practice telling your stories to each other. So in pairs of 2 or whatever, you all have your partners. Get in pairs of 2 or 3.
You wanna go first?
2.
Yeah. All right.
Okay? All right, so ready? And go. Okay, thanks everyone. Do I have a volunteer who would like to stand up and tell your story after hearing the feedback and everything, and tell your story to the group?
On some key to read.
Who is willing to do it? Tell your story to the group. Who can stand up and tell your story to the group?
Seema
Got a
can.
volunteer over here. There we go.
All right.
Seema,
Hi.
so you're on the video, can you stand here?
Okay, I come here.
If you're willing, you don't have to.
I have no problems.
Okay. This will end up on YouTube.
Yeah, basically I come from India.
Now she's too far that way.
It's fine.
Is it okay?
You're in the shot, it's just the lights behind you.
Okay.
It's okay.
I come from India and I come from a tribal community. So, rural community is completely different than the urban community. And my mother was a person who believed that, okay, minimum education is good because she can read and write and travel. But when I did good in my 10th standard, I wanted to go to college. I didn't know what it was, what was right and what was wrong. And then she said, no, now you're 10th. Oh, you're 16, now you should get married. And mentally I was not prepared because I was seeing the life in the city which was a little better. I feel the girls who move around. I wanted to go to swimming. She would say, no, you're not going because you're showing your body. And I would see my neighbors' daughters going for swimming and all. So I felt like this is something different. And I want to go. So I said, okay, what do you want me to do? I said, I want to be a teacher. Because I knew I could manipulate her only on that. So she said, my father was very supportive and he said, okay, you tell a teacher and then you can go for your 10 plus 2 education. So she said, okay, go. And the college was very close, and there I got a scholarship because of my hard work. And then I said, I want to go to a degree college. She said, no way, you are not going. Because this is the age you should get married. I said, no, I'm not going. So I had a lot of rebellion within my family, my cousins, except my grandmother said, what you feel is right, you should do. There's nothing wrong if you want to get educated. She told my mother, don't stop her. Let her. She's doing social work, it's a good cause. Like social philanthropy was something thought very religious. So okay, let her go. And then she realized, oh, she's going beyond my control. So I sat down for an agitation when I was the first year college student against the government. And that was against the local municipality, against my own college. And then she said, no, this is something that is wrong. And I think sure she'll go and she'll get into an intercaste. She'll marry to some boy who is not from our caste. She will, and that will be a big shame. So she wanted to put me down. I just walked off in the sense. I started earning my own money. She stopped giving me money. She said, you're not going to get money at all. So I started taking students for tuitions, and I completed my bachelor's, and then I did my
It's
master's.
very sensitive. You touched that button.
Okay. So I did my bachelor's and I started working, which she was not happy. She would say, okay, are you getting married now? You've finished your graduation. I said, no, this is not the right time. I need some more time. And by the time I was 25, and then she said, I think I need to throw you out of the house because this is getting too much. Then I told her, yes, let me complete my graduation, let me earn some money because in Bombay the houses are very expensive. And she said, don't worry, for an ample of money, we'll buy a house for you. And we give dowries. You know, we have a system of giving dowries to the girl. In our community, it was very common. So she would get boys who say, okay, nothing, but a house and a car, and that's all I want. And I said, no, no way, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to follow this. And then I met my husband, and we dated for almost 5 years, and I got married, and I went completely into social work. And that was the biggest shock for her. Because on the day of my marriage, I told her, Mom, I'm getting married. She said, I'm going to jump out of the 7th floor if you do this. I said, you jump. After that, I'll jump. But I was so scared because that was something very challenging for me to leave my mother from the 7th floor and go to the ground floor. And I was waiting, if she jumps, what do I do? You know, like, because that is the only incidents in my life which threatened me. Because I was really panicked, but my father says she's a darpok. Darpok is she's so scared, she will not do. She will never do it. You just go, whatever you're doing, you're right. And then I went and got married, and then I went to the field of social work. And then I felt that is where I started understanding work. And being in social work, I could understand gender equality, I could know a little of women's rights, I could see, and that's how I started work. My basic job was advocacy. I worked with the slums, but I did a lot of advocacy work by forming local community-based organizations. More than 1,500 groups were formed in my 33 years of careers, and most of them were women. I think a woman is to strengthen the entire family is strengthened, and that's was my focus. At the same time, I didn't want the elite, the so-called rich, to be off. So I could get them into neighborhood groups where they would adopt a street, and they would come and meet the administration for local issues. And then I build them around larger issues like the river pollution, sanitation in the city, and there are more than around 1,000 groups which are activated today. But at the same time when I was doing this, I had married a boy who had a very orthodox family, and his parents happened to come to me after some years of my life. And he wanted me to say that, okay, now you give up the job and look after the kids and children. And now I said, you are also working, I'm getting less paid than you. Because he was technically very highly qualified. He was traveling to Germany quite often. So I said, why don't you give up your job? We'll manage. He said, no, your salary is nothing, we can't do it. We will not be able to pay. I said, I'll borrow some money from my father and we'll pay off the loan. But you give up, you know. And that's the time when I separated from him. For 5 years, I walked out, and again, that was the biggest shock for my mother. To walk out like this in a culture where a woman is not very easy. And that's how where you see, in Indian culture, to get a divorce, it takes around 7 to 8 years. It's not easy. So I said, anyway, I know he'll come back. I was very confident. After some period, he waited for 5-6 years, and then he came back. And by that time, my mother had also seen me as a very strong woman. I bought my own house. I started some business of my own. And then I had more or less established in those 5-6 years. And I got a lot of, I think that was my best period in my life, the separated period, where I could invest a lot on myself. So I invested in a lot of trainings, capacity building, all international courses I did in those 5 to 7 years of time. And then that's where my husband said, and then I got a Deutsche Bank award for my project, which I had done with the slum people, where the women were roped in. And so my husband felt that, okay, she's doing something good work. You know, she's invested, and he said, okay, I'm coming back. I said, okay, you come back, but my terms and conditions remain the same. I'm not going to give up my job. So that's how I strongly work with a lot of union. Because since my children, after separation, my children went to the boarding schools. So I had a lot of time, so I used to invest that time in trade union activities. And then I saw the exploitation within the union, by the leaders against the workers themselves. So I even fought over there. So I knew, I was always like you, I was going, oh, she's come, so there's going to be some problem, And I could not cope it. Simple. Even the politicians, even the topmost ministries and all, they said, okay, this program is not working, call that lady. They called me warrior. So call this lady, she'll see that it is fixed. And if it was possible, I would fix it up. But I would say, this is my term, this is the way I want it to fix. If you agree, then I do it, otherwise I'm happy with what job I'm doing. But I have got the knack to understand the issue, gather people around it, identify good leaders and put them into a circle. So then the circle goes on growing. So this is my story. And then after that state award, my mother said, okay, she was a little better with me. She gave some of her property rights to me, which she had denied to me when I had got married and then I got a national award for my work. And then she said, no, I think my daughter-in-law should also go out and work now. So she has changed it's a complete 360-degree change in her life. And I think she looks at me in a very different way today. She looks at women in a very different way. All my sister-in-laws were otherwise mostly housewives, started getting some training or should support them, So I felt that this change happened, but it took a very long time and it's not easy. It's hard to, like when I was coming here, we have to spend a big, huge amount. It's like my 6 months salary to come here and go back. So my husband said, why are you investing so much money now? I said, what do you mean by? He said, now you have retired, you're not going to get any increment. You don't have to invest. I said, it's my choice. Whether I do it or I don't do it, it's my money. It's up to you. So sometimes the mentality of the men to keep you oppressed is still there. Whatever happens, it's still there. So I said, I have retired, I have money and I want to travel. I'm going for a tour in US from India. And then I go for a course. So if you want to come with me. If you don't want, don't come with me. Then after a lot of thinking, he said, when I moved, he said, okay, I'm also coming. I said, that's good. So I think it's how do you bargain, how do you negotiate, how do you remain firm. It's not easy. But I think you need to do this if you really want to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we are out of time. I was supposed to go till 2:10, right? Yeah, it's 2:16. So I just want to thank all of you for putting the time and effort into writing down and brainstorming and internally going through all your story, all the things, putting it down, and just remember as you move forward to practice your story. Try to keep it to 2 minutes because that's where you need to be with the legislators, okay? So just start practicing. I can't emphasize enough to practice telling your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My phone number is 623-570-6396. I respond to texts. I will not answer the phone, okay? But if you need me, if you have any questions, just remember, I'm at the Capitol every day during session, all day, every day. And if you have a question about process or where a bill is at or anything else, there are no stupid questions at all. I will be more than happy to help you. So take my phone number, put it in your phone. Feel free to text me if you have any questions about anything Capitol related. I'm happy to help you. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.